Howdy, I'm Jenna Perkin, and this is the 2023 Year in Review, an annual series where I look back at previous years and discuss the games that meant a lot to me. The series has evolved over the last few years as my interactions with games has changed. Ultimately, the goal of the series has always been to reflect on my own growth in thought and experience over the course of each year, all through the frame of video games. So, to start, I'd like to talk about the games that I've released this year. First, in May, I released Uncanny, a supernatural murder mystery developed alongside Michael Shaughnessy, Alex Mahato, Tyler Mitchell, and Rebecca Campbell. This project was something of a grand undertaking, being developed in just 16 weeks. As the narrative designer and writer, I spent my early time developing a narrative that crossed two different parallel universes. Figuring out how each universe would interact with each other was a particularly interesting and satisfying challenge, and it developed and evolved quite a bit over the course of development. There were multiple different whiteboards and documents that spanned this entire overarching narrative that helped somewhat give some directionality to the early bits of development. Over the course of writing, I found that the initially planned ending failed to live up to the overarching narrative, but I was really struggling to find a solution to that problem. And one day, I fell asleep on the floor of the studio, and I suddenly woke up and, as it's been described to me, dashed over to the whiteboard and began to scribble out an idea. And maybe it was because of my delirium, but when I explained the idea to everyone else on the team, no one understood what I was talking about. But that's okay. We were able to figure it out and begin to actually implement it. And once the change was implemented into the narrative, it was much more easy to understand and got a lot of more positive reception. It felt like it ended the game more in a more satisfying way. Well, I'd be remiss not to acknowledge the unhealthy work habits I engaged in during development that led me to falling asleep on the studio floor. This development experience, while often tiring, led to a final product that really hit on a lot of our goals and beyond. In postmortem, due to our work pace, some aspects of the game weren't quite as fleshed out as we may have wanted them to be. For instance, when we were behind schedule, I quickly completed the first draft of the script and moved on to level design, modeling, and additional programming just to help keep us on track. As a result, we never actually had time to return to that original script to give a second draft. And looking back at the game now, while I think the first draft works pretty effectively, it's very clear that the game is longing for that second draft that unfortunately I wasn't quite able to provide. There's just a couple of points where the narrative doesn't quite communicate effectively, or maybe you get a piece of information a little too early. And those are all problems that with a second draft we'd be able to appropriately address and improve. So had there been more time, this is definitely something I would have liked to continue exploring. But by the time we finished the game, we were ready to send it out, and we felt satisfied with our project. And I still do. We still all do. And despite the areas that could have been improved, it's still a product and a project that I'm incredibly proud to have been a part of. The game is free and available on itch. I will have a link in the description below for anyone interested. So then, over the course of the remainder of the year, I began to code some updates for Bird Feeder, a game developed by Alex Mahato and myself, which released last year. We both loved Bird Feeder and found that we had many ideas on how to improve the original game. So much so that we began to consider actually updating Bird Feeder. So on top of the code and mechanical updates I began to implement over the course of the summer, Alex began to work on various art pieces for the game, including new logo, promotional material, and game textures. We took these updates and we released Bird Feeder Extra Birdie Edition on Christmas morning. The update can be downloaded for free on itch, with a link in the description below as well for that. Alex and I always seem to find ourselves coming back to Bird Feeder. We both adore the project and continue to generate new ideas for it. So we both very strongly hope that Bird Feeder Extra Birdie Edition isn't the last we see of Bird Feeder. Finally, though unreleased, beginning in August, I have been developing a solo game project to complete my undergraduate game design work. The initial concept of this game considered Zelda-like puzzles within the context of a platformer rather than an adventure game. Having not developed a platformer, I was excited to explore the genre, and I started to build a series of ideas utilizing a day-night cycle, which I realized had a lot of design opportunities when the player has agency over the way that day and night cycles operate. Setting the game in space, this control of the day-night cycle could then be framed as the player rotating the planet from day to night. And a lot of the ideas for the rest of the game have begun to develop from there. And I'm excited to announce that this game is called A Chirp in Space and will release next year. Now, as is tradition, I will talk about the games I played this year. Okay, so I haven't played much aside from a little bit of Xenoblade 3, a little bit of Breath of the Wild, some Mario Kart with friends. Between all the computer systems I have, I've played about 23 hours of games this year, in addition to the few times I've played games with friends on their systems. Of the games I've played, I mostly only played about 6 hours of Xenoblade 3 and 4 hours of Breath of the Wild. I love both of these games, though I've been struggling to settle into playing games in the few chances that I do. I tend to get overwhelmed by everything when playing. Though I do love many of the games I play, and I hope I have the chance to make my way through them. Particularly, I hope to play more Xenoblade 3, as I do love the series and have adored the first two games. I've also enjoyed the opportunities I've had to play Horizon Zero Dawn with my friend. Playing with a friend has been the secret to actually being able to relax while playing for me. Having a friend next to me has created a more social environment when playing that has really been pleasant and enjoyable. At the same time, having a friend who is incredibly knowledgeable about Horizon has helped to make the game much less overwhelming. And, I think that this has been like the biggest challenge for me in terms of playing. I love being able to spend my time with people or just have a good, meaningful conversation. So, finding ways to integrate communal and social spaces into everyday life has really been fruitful for me as a person. For academic work, being able to body double makes the work feel less draining and isolating. Even without talking, sharing a space with somebody always makes things better. And with games, a lot of that communal or social space begins to dissipate. More than anything else, games make you feel detached from the environment, which is also what make games so cool and fascinating to begin with. That feeling of total immersion, total connection to the game. But for me, some of that immersion has actually conflicted with my desire for a social space. So while I am playing a game like Xenoblade 3, where playing with music and sound is particularly important, I'm completely disengaged with the space around me, and I start to feel really lonely and unnerved and on edge. On top of that, I've had trouble retaining all the information given to me in a game, and I often get overstimulated by all the different effects and sounds and just senses that are going on. And this has in some ways informed my design philosophy when I turn to making games. I put my effort into making games that are approachable, accessible, and easy to understand to hopefully minimize feelings of being overwhelmed or overstimulated. Though, in general, when it comes to playing, those are some problems that I still continue to face. At the end of the day, I think that approachability and difficulty aren't opposites. And I want to be able to develop games that can possess challenge while not being difficult or overwhelming. And I think that that's something that Alex and I were able to strike on with Birdfeeder. It's a game that does possess challenge, but truly can be played by anybody, or at least that's what our hope is. So for me, when it comes to playing, unless I'm sitting on a couch with someone next to me, playing games can be pretty tough. It's been a sort of change for me over the course of the last few years or so. So the way I've engaged with games is really different now than it was when I started the channel. So I've had to consider new means of engagement and new ways of discussing the fascinating medium of video games. I've been able to do that through analysis and education, often giving or listening to presentations and lectures on games at various lecture outlets or conferences. These sorts of things are particularly exciting to me, and while my engagement with games has changed a lot, my love and adoration for games has not gone away. I love that feeling of wonder that games can instill, and I love being able to instill that feeling into players. And then I turn to YouTube, and I sit here now, a little conflicted. I started this channel as a person who was gaming obsessed, looking for every opportunity to play through a busy high school schedule. But I knew that I wanted the chance to document my discussion of games in a way that could be sustained through any period of my life. I knew the way that I talked about games would change as I entered game design in college. So I wanted to create an outlet that was thorough, engaged, and well spoken, so that I could reflect on my evolution in the way I think. So once a month for the last several years, I've posted a video discussing some topics in games, slowly developing a library of discussions that could be engaged with at any time. And I'm incredibly proud of the library that I've developed too. There's a notable evolution in the way that I discuss games, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to reflect on this evolution and expand on discussions as I learn and grow in my own thinking. Because this channel has always been an outlet for my beliefs and understanding of certain things. And as I grew as a game developer and designer, my beliefs and understandings of those things has changed. I have met so many wonderful people and developed this world of friends that I care so deeply about. From all the discussions I've had about games here to my expanding and evolving beliefs, perhaps the thing that's changed the most is my own life. I feel like I've had so many meaningful relationships recently that have really shaped the social spaces I'm engaged in and how I engage with them and with people in general. I've been able to better understand this sort of empathetically charged independence, being able to do meaningful things and grow emotionally connected with certain people and experiences. This is not to talk up my own growth, but to acknowledge the impact that my social environment has had on me. I feel really lucky. In truth, posting once a month has become really tiring. Between everything else going on in my life, I found it difficult to go through the process once a month. I've been feeling it for several years now, to be honest. I kept telling myself that this would be the year that I take a break from YouTube, but I kept convincing myself to keep going anyway. My year in review in 2021 was supposed to be it for me. I wanted to take a step back, even putting out a request in the video that I needed to take better care of myself, and I needed to slow down to do that. But after saying that, I failed to take care of myself, not just in the realm of YouTube, but in the realm of life in general. I kept going, I kept rushing through things, and I wasn't taking care of my health. And the year after, I thought, okay, now this is it. This is the year. And in my year in review, I talked about how this channel has become the exact thing I wanted it to be, and that everything I wanted from it, I got already. And that was true, but still, I didn't stop, and I didn't take care of myself. And then there was this year, and I can't keep this up anymore. I haven't taken care of myself. I haven't for some time. I have very unhealthy work habits, not giving myself adequate time to rest or breathe. I've masked legitimate concerns about my need for rest under the concept of getting more work done and earlier than it needed to be done. I've been obsessed with planning my work beyond scrutiny, but at the end have neglected my physical and mental health needs. And it hasn't just been YouTube causing it. I can't keep telling myself that I'll get to relax once I get just a bit more work done. I need to find a way to relax where slowing down my work doesn't feel sickening. And I'm going to do that now. This isn't the last video you'll ever see of me, more likely than not at least. But this is the last time I'm going to prioritize such a rigid schedule. I am removing from myself an outlet for unhealthy work habits. I will not allow myself to deny needed rest in favor of doing work for YouTube instead. So just know whenever you don't see a video from me, it's because I'm resting, or at least I'm trying. I've learned so much in the last few years, and I'm incredibly grateful to everyone who has watched any of my videos in that course of time. I've said a lot of things, and I'm really proud of all the things I've said. If there's any last words I'd want to leave with, it's that oftentimes the hardest things we can do is take care of ourselves. There's so much noise in this world, and reckoning with our own emotions is such a challenge that we can often ignore the need to do so. But you will be amazed by the ability of people around you to empathize with you and to love you. Find your social world, listen well, love dearly, and through it all, allow yourself to be loved. You deserve it. Goodbye.